Plus, I wanted to speak about something that has been happening a lot, but something that is so much more pushed under the rug. And it happens in almost all societies, all communities. I wanted to speak with someone from within the South Asian community because it is one of those topics that even though we see happening around us, we really don't care about it because it becomes a matter of respect, matter of ego, or a matter of dignity in front of everyone. So I'm going to jump right into it. I've got my guest, Shela. How are you?
Hi, and thank you for having me.
All right, my pleasure. So, what we're talking about is our tendency of trying to attempt to take our own lives. And so many people do it in different contexts. So, let me just start by asking you, how long ago was this that you attempted to take your own life?
Well, for me, it was more connected to my postpartum depression. So I have one daughter. She is now 11. So this was about 11 years ago. And the context to it was that I had a very difficult pregnancy. And then, yeah, in our part of the world, nobody really talks about postpartum depression. People like me, I didn't even know this could happen. And yeah, it was quite unexpected, and it sort of crept up on me. And before I knew it, I just lost all my will to live, even though, you have this beautiful baby and everything is new, and in that point you just feel like, oh, I have nothing to live for, and what am I doing here? And it overwhelms you. So this was about 11 years ago that I felt this, yeah, overwhelming despair, I would say, that, yeah, nothing seemed worth living for.
And I'm not going to even say that I can understand because I have not walked your shoes. So I mean, you're very courageous to be able to come forward and be willing to speak with me. And in terms of what happened to be the tipping point in all this, that okay, all this was building up, and at what point in time the thought came that okay, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just going to do this or try this?
Yeah, well, my circumstances were a bit more complicated than just postpartum depression. Number one, yeah, postpartum depression was a big part of it, and I should have asked for help. I knew I didn't feel right, but my circumstances, like I said, were a bit different because uh, when I was pregnant, my mother-in-law, she got diagnosed with breast cancer 5 months into my pregnancy. So that was, yeah, that was a lot of stress overall on the family, on the relationship with my husband. And then when my daughter was born, my mother also fell sick. She had this problem with her spinal cord. So with both mothers being ill, and then after my daughter was born, we found out that my mother-in-law's cancer was terminal.
Oh
So it
my
was a
goodness.
lot of stress on the relationship because there was no time to discuss what I was going through because everybody was going through so much. And yeah, I was like, you feel like you're all alone in the world and nobody really cares. And at one point you think, would it really make a difference if I was in here tomorrow? Would anybody really miss me? And yeah, I know I was a new mother. I should have thought about my daughter, but it all overwhelms you and it all envelopes you like this cloud that you can't get out of. And you feel, okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't take it anymore. The pain is just, and it's a pain that it's not a physical pain. Like, yeah, you have a pain, you take some medicine and you're fixed. That's it.
Right.
But this mental anguish that you're living with day in, day out, and you from where you stand, you don't see an end to it. So you just seem like, okay, I cannot do this anymore. So you just say, okay, what's the way to turn the switch off? How do I turn this off and just be done with it? And that's the way I saw it.
And while you were thinking about turning the switch off, was there a part of you that thought or that recognized that a good part of you was trying to do this or thinking about it, where there might have been a conflict within you? Okay, a good idea. No, Shala, it's not a good idea. So what was going on? Can you talk about that? Or
Well, yeah, because when you decide to do something like this, it's not like you just get up one morning and you say, okay, well, I think I'm going to end my life today. No, it builds up over months, and you're still fighting with yourself, and there's a part of you that, yeah, I don't know, I don't want to sound like someone who really says this kind of stuff, but I think women are very strong mentally, and they have the ability to fight with these urges, because overall there's a lot of pressure, a lot of emotional pressure on us throughout our lives, and we learn how to deal with it, we learn how to cope with it. So over months I kept, I say, oh no, I'll just take it one day at a time, I'll take it 1 hour at a time, I'll just do this, I'll busy myself in mundane tasks, and it'll be over. But it was never over. It just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and it just came to a point where it just overflowed, and I thought, no, yeah, this has to end, this has to stop.
and you bring up a very good point in terms of coping strategies. Was there anyone you had shared any of this with as you were fighting with these thoughts, or as you were having these?
You see, Umair, yeah, because that's how we know each other. We've known each other for quite some time. I was always somebody who was super confident, super outgoing. I was working till I got married. And then, yeah, circumstances didn't allow for me to keep working after I was married. So I think that I felt like identity. I felt like I've lost my personal identity, and I've just become somebody's wife, somebody's mother. And I was so caught up in that I thought nobody can understand this, because my friends were all they all had, success in their careers. They were all becoming people on their own. And I felt like, ah, what did I do with my life? What have I achieved? And you just feel worthless. So I really didn't think anybody could understand. So I never really reached out, which I should have. And in retrospect, I think that would have helped a lot had I reached out. But I just thought that, yeah, nobody cares. Nobody wants to bother. So why bother telling anybody? Because again, it's such a big taboo. Mental health, even in this day and age, in our part of the world, it's such a big taboo.
Right.
To even discuss this. People simply say, oh, pray, it'll be better. Read the Quran, it'll be better. Busy yourself, you have too much free time. That's why you think all these things. But people don't understand that when you are in that dip, when you are in that place, that very dark place, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to pray. You don't want to talk. You don't want to stay busy. It's losing the will to live. You just want to stay in bed and wish it was all over. So, yeah.
In terms of your relationship with your husband, could he or was he able to see anything, any change of behavior or any signs where he was able to look into this without you even saying anything?
Now, that's a very, very good point and a very good question, because I had known my husband for 7 years before we got married. We were best friends. I got pregnant really quick, like after a few months after we got married. And this was all in the first couple of years of our marriage. And the thing is, you can be someone's best friend. You could have known each other for 10 years, but living together, being married, being in that kind of dynamic changes a lot of things. So there's always an adjustment period. And we were still going through that while we had our first child and having both our mothers not well. I think I'm not going to blame him and I'm not going to defend him, but I'm just going to state the facts that he had a lot going on in his head as well. He was going through a difficult time emotionally himself, because yeah, knowing that you're going to lose your mother in a few months is not an easy place to be in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think he noticed. And I did a very good job of covering it. I don't think anybody could have guessed, because I was social, where we were living on site where my husband used to work. So it was a very close-knit community. There was a lot of socializing. So yeah, I was a very social person. I was hosting people every other day, and there was no way anybody could have told what was going on inside my head. So yeah, but my husband, I don't think he could have told what was going on inside me.
Now, also, had someone in your circle, extended circle,
Hmm.
committed suicide?
No,
All right.
not even remotely. Not that I know of, but not even remotely. And that's why you see there were no red flags.
Right.
And when you see yourself, but again, it's so complicated that um, when you're, especially, you see, there are two types of depression. There's clinical depression and there's functional depression. And what I had was highly functional depression, because I was able to do everything. My house was always clean, my daughter was always clean and fed and taken care of. I was cooking, I was socializing, I was doing everything. But that place inside my head was so dark, and I just didn't feel like I could let anybody in, even my closest friends, even my sister. Yeah, my parents, I didn't want to tell them because they had enough to worry about with my mother being ill. So yeah, it was a very lonely place. So I had no way of knowing that it would get so far.
Yes. Now, in terms of compartmentalizing your work, your family life, and were there any times where you may have just been busy and doing stuff, and there was a pause, or you may just stop doing what you were doing, and anyone may have just seen, hey, Shella, what's going on?
No, I think the kind of lifestyle we had, I don't think anybody could have guessed that something was off. I I don't know. I used to be, when I was younger, I used to be very, open about my feelings. But as I grew older, especially when you get married, you don't want to, you see, in the culture where we've grown up, admitting or accepting the fact that you have some sort of a mental health issue is a sign of weakness. You're saying you're not strong enough to cope with how simple situations. What is it? Nothing. Why are you making such a big deal out of a small issue? So you don't you don't want to let other people see your weakness and the fact that you're struggling. You want to maintain this facade of yeah, I have everything under control, I have it all set, it's all going good, it's all smooth. I don't want anyone to know I'm having trouble coping with life in general. So yeah, I don't think so. If somebody did notice, they didn't
Mhm.
say anything.
Okay.
They kept it to themselves.
So you raise a very valid point, maintaining that facade. At any point in time, did the person in the mirror ask you, what the hell are you thinking? Rarely do we bring the person we see in the mirror in these conversations because of what you said, that the society we come from, it is hard to admit that there might be a problem. That's the reason I ask you that question.
Yeah. Well, the person in the mirror had become somebody I didn't recognize anymore, because my life changed so drastically in the matter of what, a year and a half, from being this confident, career oriented person who wanted to be somebody by the time they're in their late 20s, early 30s, to becoming a young mother, to becoming somebody who is struggling emotionally with all the new responsibilities, dealing with the in-laws. Yeah, marriage is a big change. So I suppose I wasn't coping very well with the changes, and the person in the mirror just reminded me of who I used to be, and I just didn't recognize that person anymore. So my conversations with that person in the mirror were very brief, because it would just, yeah, it would just upset me even more. And yeah, you build an armor around yourself to protect you, and it just doesn't let anybody in, sometimes not even yourself. You just try not to think about it. You try not to go too deep inside your head. Yeah, I'll deal with it later. I don't want to deal with this right now. And you just move on, and you try to, like you said, you try to distract yourself. You try to cope whatever way you can, even if it means just avoiding talking to yourself and coming to terms with your own thoughts.
Right. And you said in terms of it being functional, you're always busy. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're doing what you're liking. You're taking care of the house. You're taking care of people around you. So you're always doing stuff. Maybe in a way you have that perfect excuse to not think about what's going on or how you might want to handle it based on what I just heard, had that observation.
You see, I'll give you a very big example of how I, apply that, have applied that to myself in the past. When my mother passed away back in 2010, it was really sudden. Like one day I spoke to her, and the next morning she was gone. So when I didn't even know till I got to my parents' house in Islamabad, and it was a very big shock. But do you know what I did?
Mm-hmm.
I saw my father. He was completely shattered. My sister completely shattered. And I told myself, oh, I need to be strong for these people. I need to zip up my emotion, lock it up somewhere. I'll deal with it later. And I think I only cried for like 5 minutes that day. And what happened was that grief, that, it's the biggest loss ever. Losing a parent is one of the biggest things that can happen to you. So, and I bottled up my grief. Like literally, my friends came over in the evening, and they were staring at me, and they were like, how are you normal? Why aren't you more devastated? And my answer was, well, my crying isn't going to bring her back, so I'm not going to cry. And I decided, oh, I go back to my house, and I will grieve, I will cry, I will do everything. But I bottled it up for so many days that when I actually wanted to let go of the grief, I couldn't. So functionality for me came above dealing with my own emotions. And throughout my life, I think dealing with my emotions has come in second place to taking care of people around me. I'd rather be there for somebody else than sit and, think about what's going on inside my head.
The point you raise is a fantastic one, and sometimes it is counterproductive to us wanting to take care of ourselves. But I to a great extent I understand where you're coming from in terms of deciding whether taking care of yourself or others. So how did you do it?
So
What did you exactly
I
do?
well, it was the afternoon. I remember very clearly, and I used to have a lady helping me with the house chores and with my daughter. And I dressed her up. I dressed my daughter, not the lady, but I dressed up my daughter, and I sent her out for a walk. She used to be, I think, about a year old. And I was all alone at home, and I found every pill that I could find in the house, whether it was anti-allergies and painkillers and everything. And I took, I think, about 10 of them, or 15 maybe. And I just had them, and I lay down in bed, and I thought, this is it. But I think it was not time for me to go. So I woke up a couple of hours later, a bit blacked out, like, oh, it's only been 5 minutes. And then I looked at the clock and it was like 2-3 hours later. So I wasn't very successful at it, thank God. But that's what I thought was the most painless way to go. Yeah, it was a bit, I don't want to say it was silly, but that's what I was thinking right back then. And that's what made sense back then. You can never, you know, because I've been through that experience, I don't judge people on what they do when they're in a low place, because sometimes those things are the only things that make sense. Those are the only things you can, think of. So in retrospect, you might think, oh, what did you think a few anti-allergy pills would do to you? They weren't going to kill you anyway. But I was desperate. I was lonely. I was in a very dark place.
And what was the first thought that came to your head when you woke up?
I think I was relieved, because going through that, I think I thought, my first thought was of my daughter. And I think she's the one who probably brought me back to life, because yeah, I loved her so much. And I thought, then, you go into that phase where you curse yourself. What was I thinking? Why did I do that? I don't want to do this to her. So yeah, I was relieved, I would say, that nothing happened.
How long did it take you to tell anyone after that? Or how
Many
long was it
years.
before you told the first person that you shared this with, that, hey, this is what I did?
Many, many, many years later, I told a friend.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, even right now, I would never openly admit it to my husband, even, that I did do it, because he would be, you feel, oh, the other person's going to be so disappointed in me. And they're going to think, oh, yeah, you can do better than that. And you're stronger than that. You're better than that. You have more sense. You're more intelligent. But it took many years, for many, many years, because I was alone at home. So it was easy for me to keep it to myself. But I think I hugged my daughter a lot more after that day than I did before.
Your family, immediate family, when they came to know, or if they know, or members of the family who know, how has there been any difference in behavior or perception or attitude since them becoming aware of this?
Now, to be very honest, they don't know. And yeah, if I'm really honest to myself, I don't want them to know, because it would hurt them. It would hurt them that I decided to do something like this rather than share my pain and share my problems with them. But like I said, in retrospect, it all seems very clear that this is what I should have done. This is what I could have done. Everybody would have been there for me. Everybody cared. But when you're there, when you're in that moment, when you're in that place, it's like you're all alone, and it's like nobody will understand. And you don't want to hurt them. You don't want to disappoint them. You don't want to appear weak. You just want it to end.
Man, I'm glad that you didn't succeed. Yes, I'd be so
I'm glad
mad.
to.
To be honest, I would be so mad if I found out that this happened. You have no idea. Okay. In terms of, have you sought, or even without telling anyone, have you spoken with someone? Have you, in terms of professional guidance?
Um, well, I did when the postpartum depression was like, really, I felt like there's something wrong with me, that I don't want to do anything, that I don't feel like I have anything to look forward to. I did reach out to the only doctor that I knew back then. That was my gynecologist. And she took it so, she acted like it's no big deal. So that kind of reinforced my belief at that time that, oh, I'm just making a mountain out of a molehill. There's nothing to worry about. And I'm just being silly. I'm being weak. I'm being, I'm just worrying about nothing, and I don't need anything to do. And later on, we both lost, my husband and I, we both lost our mothers in 2010. And 2010 was a very, roller coaster of a year. And at the end, we moved to a different country. So even though it didn't get that bad, I've had bad days. There are days where I consider I need help. And it got a bit difficult this past year for some reason. I don't know why. Midlife crisis, I suppose. I'm nearing my 40s. So I did reach out. This time I really did say that I need help. I went to my GP and I said, maybe you can refer me to a psychologist. And she did recommend some. So I might go if I still continue to have bad days. But so far, sadly, I haven't been to a medical professional to deal with this. But the circumstances have changed, that they've made me stronger. They've helped me cope better. But it's never been that bad. You see, now it's more like, oh, I'm feeling a bit low. It's not like I have no joy in life. I have nothing to look forward to. So it's there on and off, but I would say I'm fine.
I'm going to, at the risk of profiling, I'm going to ask you what part of the world your gynecologist, you said, came from. So you said you shared it with your, I believe your gynecologist, right?
Yes, that was
Okay.
back in Pakistan when
okay.
when my daughter was a newborn, and I was having the really, really bad postpartum depression.
Okay.
And
all right.
So this was a Pakistani gynecologist.
Yes, and that's why I said, at the risk of profiling, I wanted to ask the question, because this goes back. This is a deep-rooted issue.
You see, sadly, again, I would also say, I don't want to create stereotypes, but cultures are, you see, we have things in cultures that make them different from other cultures.
Right.
We can't just say everybody is the same, every culture is the same, every ritual is the same. We have, certain ways that societies think. There are certain, things that are more taboo in one part of the world than they are in another. And there are certain ways people deal with things like mental health differently. Like where I am now, I'm in the Netherlands. People don't feel any shame talking about things like, oh, I'm having a burnout. It's a very, easy to talk about thing. Like people just say, oh, I'm having a burnout, I'm getting help. So things like that. But in Pakistan, having a burnout, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Man up, be strong, pray 5 times a day, you'll be fine. So,
or get married, or have kids, or have more
get
kids.
married, have another child. You have too much free time. I'm not bad mouthing our culture, but that is the way it is. So that is the way I've experienced things. Like all the time that I was in Pakistan, I was told, oh, you should do something. Why don't you do something? You have too much free time. But here, when I went to my GP, she simply said, oh, I understand. It's not easy. It can be really difficult. And this is what we should do about it.
One thing, and I'm glad at the end what you mentioned. So have you become more observant in terms of other folks around you to try to pick up any red flags or any change of behavior out of context, out of personality, since you've gone through a lot of the stuff yourself over the years?
Well, of course, when you go through it yourself, you recognize they're more visible to you than to other people. But the one thing that my whole experience changed in me has definitely been that I stopped judging people on how they cope with different life events or with different situations. And I never say, oh, you should do this. I always tell them, even if it's my friends, or mostly, yeah, it's my friends. I always say, I'm here to listen. I'm here to listen. I can understand what you must be going through, but I cannot imagine, because every person deals with it, feels it differently. So all I try to do is I try to be there more, like without judgment. I always tell my friends, nothing you tell me will be so bad that I will stop being friends with you or I will judge you. Just tell me what's going on. And I do recommend, if I feel that it's not something that's going to go away by talking to friends, I always tell them, please get help. Please get professional help. Because, yeah, like you, I'm not a trained professional when it comes to mental health. I've just been somebody who deals with it in my daily life. But I do tell them there's no shame in getting help. We're human beings. The brain, the mind is as much of an organ as your kidney or your heart or your stomach. So treat it as an organ, take care of it, get help.
On any given day, personal life is far better than a deceased friend or sister or mom or a wife. So, okay, I'm glad you kind of elaborated on that. So, you spoke about coping. Anyone listening to our conversation, what would you want to tell them? Anything that may have worked for you, or any coping mechanisms, from simple to whatever level of complexity? What would you tell someone who's going through that and maybe thinking about it?
I think the biggest coping mechanism is to remind yourself you don't need 20 people to love you and adore you and give you time, especially as you grow older. People get busier. You're not going to have friends talking to you every day. Everybody's busy. But the one thing you need to remind yourself when you go into that dark places, there is somebody, at least one person, for whom the world would be empty if you're not in it. So you're precious. Don't don't think you're worthless. No one is worthless. Everybody deserves to be happy, and you have to make your happiness yourself every single day. I know it's hard. I know it seems impossible on days. I still have bad days. But then I do remind myself that I don't need 5 million people loving me every day. I need one or two or three. And you always have those. And it's worth living. It's worth healing to be there for them tomorrow, because they'll be very happy to see your face tomorrow morning.
Fantastic, fascinating. And thank you for putting it in such a nice, encouraging way, coming from someone who's actually gone through that. I really appreciate that. And in terms of going back to our brief mention of culture and society, how would you want to see things improve, even on a very individual to individual level, or a very ground level, to be able to cope with these things?
With reference to Pakistani,
Mental
South
health,
Asian
yes,
societies,
in respect to mental health and being able to cope with these things or identify these things, yes, definitely Pakistani, South Asian
I
community.
think I think with our generation, things are already changing, because the stories I hear and see coming from that part of the world, I think people are already becoming more aware of mental health issues. They're talking about it. The taboo is dissolving. The stigma is being removed, but um, there's still a long way to go. but I think they're headed in the right. I think you have more access to mental health professionals now in Pakistan. And well, I can only talk about Pakistan because that's where I'm from. But I think the stigma is slowly dissolving. There's work in the media being done about it. So awareness is everything, I suppose, at the end of the day, as is with any issue. As long as you create an awareness that people know about it, people know how to recognize it, and people know that, yeah, there's nothing wrong about talking about it. So that's the only way forward.
Yeah, I'm just going to thank you, and also the fact that you didn't succeed. Yes, you have
I'm
no
glad
idea,
to every
because
day.
I was so surprised when I heard this. I commend you for being able to speak with me and to share your thoughts and your experiences, because even if this can help even one person in any
Exactly.
respect, I believe I've succeeded, and I'm sure you're going to feel a whole lot better in terms of contributing to someone, because this is something I really want to not come across. So thank you very much once again for your time and being able to share this with us.
Have a nice day too.
All
Thank
right.
you.